Your house also is Calvin Green is your son, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Mrs. Green, would you give us your full name and how you spell your last name?
My name is Millie Green, and it's plain old Green.
Yes, ma'am.
Green. That is right.
And your birthday?
My birthday, I was born in June the 10th, 1903.
And your parents?
My parents was Nathan and Martha Shoemake from Alabama. We came to this country from Alabama.
Your parents ever relate any stories of your grandparents to you?
Well, not so much, 'cause I was young when my mother passed away, and but I know some history and all, 'cause there's family trees and all. I get it from my cousin in Alabama. Well, my folks left Alabama in September 1909 to come to Oklahoma. My mother had two brothers here in Oklahoma. One was over here south of Terlton, the other in south of Jennings across the river. So we came to Oklahoma, and my father, he rented a boxcar on the train to haul our furniture and farming equipment, bedding, and so on. And of course, we all rode in the coach. And we got up here to Terlton, and of course, they didn't know we were coming, no phones or nothing them days. And my dad got a man to take us out to my uncle's. It's over by McElroy, where McElroy is now, if you know where that is.
Close to the McElroy Schoolhouse?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep, and so he had the whitest cotton patch and biggest cotton patch I ever did see, this your uncle of mine. And there wasn't no bridge across the Cimarron. My uncle, across the river, he had a place for us to move to when we come to Oklahoma, but the river was up, and had to wait the river go down for us to cross, so he could cross and come and get us.
Now, would you be south of McElroy across the river, or would you be on
We've
McElroy?
been on north of the Cimarron River.
Yes, ma'am.
Right in there, you know where Roy Davison's place was? That's back where Michael Roy, he goes there. Well, that's where Uncle Joe lived.
Yes, ma'am.
And he had a large family, and there's 7 children in our family, my mother and dad. And moved in there in that little house, 2 rooms with a lean-to kitchen. And we was there about 3 weeks, but we got his cotton all picked. And my uncle then, south of the river over there, it's west of Buckeye,
Yes.
and west of Silver City. That's where he lived. Well, he finally got across the river and come and got us and taken us back over there. And he had a tent and dugout ready for us to move into. They couldn't get the cook stove in the dugout or tent was room. Left it out under a tree because it's September, it's warm yet, and that's where they cook. So we stayed there then, and there's a man named, he was an old bachelor. He had cotton, he wanted cotton pickers. We went in and picked his cotton. He gave us some chickens, which we were going to need for our eggs. And picking cotton, then he paid us some money too. And finally, we got started going to school down there at Buckeye. We went to school. My dad was a carpenter. And my Uncle Will said, I want you to build me a big house. So my dad did. He built a big house. And about east of where we were living in the dugout and tent, my Uncle Will's son, Dave, was living in a little 2-roomed house. And so when they got my Uncle Will's house built, Dave moved where Uncle Will was living. And then we moved in where Dave was.
Yes.
Out of the dugout and tent, which we thought was wonderful.
I bet that was a happy
And that
day.
was, and they made a crop in 1910. Well, and my dad met up with a doctor, Dr. Bland. He was an Indian. He lived at Red Fork, but he had some land there. And just on east where we were living there on my uncle's place. And he wanted my dad to farm his place. And my dad said he would. And he rented it for 1911. We moved in there. Big two-story log house with a breezeway across it. We thought we were in heaven, having a big house like that. And upstairs, the girls in one room on one end, the boys on the other end. Well, that was wonderful. Well, in March of that year, my baby brother was born, March the 6th. And 6 days later, March the 12th, we lost our mother. My mother passed away. And
Was that of a flu epidemic or by childbirth?
childbirth. Childbirth.
Did she have to have a midwife or did she have a
I
doctor?
had a doctor. He came out of Jennings, but he wasn't a good doctor because we had one later come out of Mannford. And he said if he'd done what he should have been, this wouldn't have happened.
Should have been
And
all
she
right.
was only 39 years old.
That's so young.
And yes, and she left 8 children, and she lost one son while they was living in Alabama.
The doctor's name from Mannford, do you recall his name?
Caulfield, Dr. Caulfield. Yes, he was, I remember well. And I forgot the one was in Jennings. But, well, anyway, then there's a Methodist preacher over there. It's east of where Grummy at now. There wasn't no drum rider, oils or nothing there.
Yeah.
And he come and preached at Buckeye. They did that them days because people couldn't go to town and church.
Yes.
They'd have services out in the schoolhouse. And he came there and he was preaching. So he and his wife had several children. They getting on up the summer and had cotton to hoe and all. He said to my dad, he said, now my wife and I will take this baby and keep it. And what, so you're the girls can work in the field. My dad said it's all right. So he did, because he knew he had children and knew the baby'd have good care. And they did. So just 3 months to the day, we lost our baby brother, they called us. He had what they call a summer complaint. And that's what they called it them days. And so that was a sadness, and that was a drought year, 1911.
1911, yes.
It was. And it was a hard year for us. I look back, and however I was young, I don't know how we made it, but we did by the will of God. Yeah.
How did you make it, I wonder? Did
Well,
you just
we
do
didn't
everything?
make it very good, I'm going to tell you right now. And for clothes, I think about now and seeing people having so many clothes and all the food and everything they have now. Back them days, we just had so very little. And so we had very little cotton then to pick that fall to pay bills or buy groceries or clothes or anything. And it was bad. But whenever my dad, if he could pick up any work, carpenter or helping anybody out, he would do that, and that'd bring in a little money. And then it went on from there over the years, and there was, I had 4 brothers and 4 sisters. There was 9 of us in the family. So then,
Their names, Mrs. Green? Your brothers and sisters' names?
you want their names?
Yes, if
Well, Walter, no, I'm not talking about the babies now. Well, Hugh Boyd one was buried in Alabama.
Yes.
And Matt Daniel, the one's baby, was just 3 months old. And my older brother's Walter. And then Granville, he's the only one that's left besides me and the family now. He's at Cushing, Granville. And then Wallace, that's your brothers. And Lily, Etta, and Rebecca. Myself, that was the 4 girls.
Yes.
And
Do you remember the dugout, how it was made?
yes.
Did you all sleep there, or how was?
No, I tell you, we slept in a tent.
Yeah.
Later in the winter, we had to put the stove in the dugout and a little table in to eat around. You can imagine a bunch of kids and how many can get. It must have been a pretty good sized dugout. However, I don't remember that. I'll tell you, we thought we was all right because that was an Indian country. And them days there was lots of Indians around. We'd heard so many stories about Indians. Them we scared to death.
Yes.
But anyway, and then the tent, it was a fair-sized tent. We had the beds in there for the sleeping quarters and then pallets on the floor, quilts and all for the children. That's how we got by.
Yes. Do you remember any of the Indians of the area?
No, I can't recall any of the names. Now, this year man that we moved in his house, I told you later, Dr. Bland, he gave my dad a lot of history about Indians. A lot of it he wouldn't tell us because he knew it'd scare us. And about the family north of the river, and they were white people, and they'd improved the land and fixed it up, and they had a family, and he wanted this land, these Indians. And this year man, he didn't want to give up his farm. He had his family and all. And they came in and they killed them all. Now this doctor told my dad this. And he said it killed them all but the baby. And it was laughing, of course. You know, he didn't know what it was all about.
Yes.
And they said they didn't hesitate about killing it. They didn't know what to do. And they didn't. They kept the child. Kept the white child. And, but that there is about as much as I remember any bad things, and that was enough for happening.
Did your doctor friend tell you what time period this incident took place?
No, it happened just before we came to Oklahoma.
Okay.
Now, my uncle wanted to come and got us across the river and come and got us.
Yes.
He moved to Oklahoma in 1902. He knew a lot of this, and a lot of this was history to him. And my other uncle, where we stayed and picked his cotton, Uncle Joe, he came in 1907. And we were living there in Alabama, and we was having chills, malaria chills. It was swampy back in there. And my uncles kept on writing my mother, their sister, to come to Oklahoma. They'd have better health. So she decided that's just what we do, my dad and me. And so they around we came, but as far as the Indians, they never bothered us. It became more civilized and more settled, I guess, and there's more white people getting in there, moving in. I guess they couldn't, were doing, but just like this doctor, he was a kind man. He would do anything for you.
Were there any Indian signs as far as trails or grind hoes that you can recall in that area?
No. We did. We used to pick up those Indian,
The arrowheads?
yeah, airheads. We used to do that.
Yes.
But those others, I don't remember those.
When you cross the